May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Yet, as communities celebrate, this country is suffering from a new, not unprecedented wave of anti-Asian hate crimes. Just down the road from Cape Ann, the city of Lowell, with its vibrant Cambodian community, has cultural lessons for all of us. The United States began settling Cambodian refugees fleeing from the brutal Khmer Rouge regime in Lowell in the 1980s. Today, Lowell has the second largest population of Cambodian Americans in the country after Long Beach, California. I'm speaking to Sovanna Pouv, Executive Director of the Cambodian Mutual Assistance Association. Sovanna, how did I do with your last name?
I think you actually got much closer than last time. It's actually quite difficult because the P actually sounds like a strong B. Yeah, so it's Sovanna Pouv. But you came pretty close. So thank you for trying. Thank you for trying.
Well,
Yeah.
I will work on it, but thank you for the lessons.
Mhm.
Sovanna, can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey and your family's personal journey to the U.S.?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Sovanna Pouv. I'm a 40-year-old Cambodian refugee, now American. I was born in a refugee camp in Thailand when my mother was fleeing the Khmer Rouge from Cambodia to Thailand. I'm going to do a kind of like a short love story about my parents really quickly. And so my mother, as she was escaping from Thailand from Cambodia to Thailand, she was caught in a gunfire between the army and the Khmer Rouge. And so she was hit in the thigh with a bullet, and she was left to die on the path because her friends thought that she wouldn't be able to make it to the camps. But my father, who was part of the army that's part of Thailand at that time, his comrades or troops saw her at the ditch, and so they picked her up and took her to the refugee camp and treated her. And then my mom eventually met my dad at the refugee camp, and they fell in love, and they eventually made me. And so I was born in the camps. Yes, I'm October 24th of 1980, and Kawadang is a really popular camp that many Cambodian refugees in Lowell are from. And so I lived there for a few months, and then I was later moved to the Philippines, so that my mother and father can kind of like learn about refugee resettlement and how it's like to resettle in a new country. And so November of 1981, my mother, father, and I had the opportunity to come live in the country, the United States. And the first city we lived in was Chicago, and we lived there for about 7 years or so before we moved to Lowell. And I'll share a little bit more about like how, I guess I can share now, but how like my mother decided to move to Lowell. The reason why is because when my mother and aunt was separated during the whole genocide situation, they thought either of them didn't survive, and so they're separated in the camps. And then my grandparents were killed, so they were the first to go because during the Khmer genocide, they would kill individuals that would show any sign of intelligence, that were involved with any kind of culture, that were involved in any kind of music and art or even government. And so if you had any signs of that, whether you have glasses or lighter skinned complexion, or you look like you have a lot of money, you would be a target for the Khmer Rouge because they truly believe in the agrarian lifestyle, and that Western influence had created a lot of challenges for our country at that time. And so Pol Pot, the leader of the regime at the time, believed that Western civilization and influence should not kind of survive in the country of Cambodia. And so my grandparents were killed, and so when they both thought my aunt and my mother thought they weren't survivors, they separated. And then my mom, I guess through like a lot of like friends and connections between Chicago and Lowell, my mother found out that my aunt actually did survive, and my aunt actually she moved to the United States around 85, 86 to California first, but then she decided to move to Lowell. And then around 1987, when they found out that they both were alive, the only thing that my mom could do was to repack or pack up all of our bags and move to Lowell, because Lowell is not only where her sister is, but Lowell was developing and creating a thriving Cambodian community.
Well,
But
these
yeah.
refugee stories are just heartbreaking. And, you just imagine what people like your family have been through just to get.
hmm
And
Yes.
then, there's a whole new struggle starting off in a country where you don't speak the language, it's completely foreign. The Cambodian community in Lowell is so vibrant, and you have just celebrated your New Year's,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
You want to tell us
Yes.
about what that looks like in Lowell?
Yeah. So the New Year celebration is a chance for the Cambodian community to come together and to celebrate and put all of our differences to the side and celebrate our Khmer pride. Khmer is the ethnic term for Cambodians, and so celebrate our Khmer pride because Khmer New Year is a 3-day celebration, and it celebrates the harvesting season, welcoming the rainy season. And so we all get together and just like be together as much as possible, eat food, play games, dance, and things like that. And in Lowell itself, before COVID, multiple parties take place over the weekend. A lot of restaurants hold functions, and it's just a total like celebration of joy and fun and energy. Um, but because of COVID, that was limited. And so how do we continue the energy in the digital format, and but also some components of in-person events as well. And so the team and I, we created about four separate events. The first one is called the Welcoming Angel. It's a Zoom event where we welcome the Khmer New Year Angel. Like it's a digital kind of. It was an event where we had young people perform traditional dances, had some singing and poetry. The second event was the Cambodian flag raising event that's based in Lowell. Most of our elected officials showed up, and the mayor gave a proclamation to us and the community about declaring April as Cambodian New Year month. Not just 3 days, it's a whole month of celebration. Every year, when we have a gala, we have about 350 to 400 people show up to a restaurant. Yeah, Cambodians party hard. What happened this year is that the digital opportunities that we had connected us like globally. So we actually used this opportunity to connect and build partnerships with other Cambodian serving organizations across the country of the United States. But then the crazy part is that we actually had um, one or two people showcasing from Cambodia, the country of Cambodia. So the beauty about this virtual event is that it brought us all together celebrating the Cambodian community, whether you're from Lowell, Chicago, Long Beach, Florida, or Cambodia itself. We all came together for this one event.
Savannah, in some ways, we hear about these beautiful traditions that you are able to celebrate and maintain, but we all know that integration is a difficult situation. And you have written poignantly about the difficult times and the painful racism you've experienced over the years. Do you want to talk
Yes.
about that also?
Yeah. So yes, and so my first time experiencing racism was in a way where I didn't fully understand what it meant. And so when I was living in Chicago and my family resettled in a very difficult part of Chicago, we were surrounded by a lot of Black African Americans and Latinx folks. And so at that time when the country of the United States is just finished a war with Vietnam. And Vietnam, in our books, in the United States history books, it seems that the U.S. won, but really not. The U.S. kind of gave up the war, and so when we first arrived to the country, um, Americans at that time could not tell apart between Vietnamese, Cambodian, Laotian, Southeast Asian individuals, or even Asian individuals in general. Couldn't tell us apart. And so what you would do automatically when you see someone different that has threatened your country is that you for some people, a natural way of protecting and taking care of themselves is to not welcome people that are from a country that you may have had had some altercation with, and it's particularly a major war. And so we encountered a lot of racism. We had a lot of people call us very derogatory Asian names multiple times, and it's just like picked on us and made fun of us, and it was just really hard. And it's not just um, Black folks and Latinx folks too, but also white folks too. Such a part of my life where it was really hard as well was when I was attending Lowell High School, and I'm not the smartest kid in the world, but I was in the top classes. I was a studious kid. I loved art. I loved music. I loved to read. I loved to write, and I did pretty well in my classes. And so I went to high school and had really good grades. And unfortunately, the counselor at the time, the guidance counselor at the time, thought that my English and my studies and my experience and my grades weren't good enough to be in like high honors classes or even higher classes. They thought I should be like either basic classes. But then I was like, excuse me, I have the same exact grades as my classmates. I feel like the only difference is that I'm Asian and that they're white, you know. And at that time, you know, it may not. It's just created. It's just set up in a way where like you want to make sure that other people are not catching up
Mm,
to the white race, right? And so I
mm,
went through high school and did my thing and graduated. But one point where extreme racism really like hurt me from the police force. Um, so at that time, I was 17 and I was driving a car that matched the description of a drive-by shooting in Lowell. So Lowell at the time when I was 17, 18, which is around 1997, 1998, was a heavily violent city. There was, you know, there was street wars between the Latinx and the Asian community because of racism and hate towards each other. Um, and so at that time, there were a lot of shootings, a lot of people dying, and just young people getting hurt. And my car matched the description of a car that recently did a drive-by shooting at a park nearby. And so I was driving with my friends and I, two other people. We were just going to rent a movie and have a VHS movie night. You know, we were in our PJs, we got our snacks, popcorn, and stuff like that. But I was stopped at an intersection, and about like 3 or 4 like undercover cops showed up and stopped my car, and I immediately had a gun pointed to my head. And the officer said, you know, get out of the effing car now. Get out with your hands up. And I was like, officer, what did I do? I'm just going to watch a movie. I'm just going to rent a movie and stuff. No, get out of the effing car now. Put your hands on the car. We need to search your car and your vehicle. And so that was a very traumatic event, just because the things that we hear and see in the news today, right, involving people of color in the police, are all captured by media, are all captured by cell phones, are all captured by equipment that you can immediately upload for the world to see. You don't have to wait for the news to wait till 5 o'clock to watch things anymore. But can you imagine something like that and all other crimes that were caught that had happened in the past that had not been captured on media that can be shared immediately? And so that was very scary because I can one wrong move and I could have had my head blown off, you know. And so I was very, you know, it was a very traumatic event. You know, not, you know, I am a refugee. I am a child of a genocide survivor. My mother and aunt witnessed people dying, witnessed their own parents dying, you know, and then when you move to a country where they're supposed to help you and allow you to live better lives, they continue to perpetuate this hate just because of who you are and what you represent. But again, I want the audience to know that like it was very negative in the sense where like it was an experience that I will always remember in my life. But what I do know is that I have a choice, and that choice is whether I continue to be hurt and be pained by those experiences, or I can be part of a movement to help stop those experiences so that other people cannot feel those pains moving forward. And so of course, I made the latter choice, and want to believe in humanity and want to believe that people are born not hating each other. You know, people are taught all that stuff. And I truly believe that if people are able to learn hate, they can unlearn hate.
So, how would you describe the race relations in Lowell today?
Mm. Oh, I would say, great question. First of all, some data points. Lowell is about 52% persons of color in terms of population. And when you look at the population of I'll use Lowell High School as the data point place, but Lowell High School has about 70% plus students of color, but about 90% administration is white. You can take that for what it is. The city council had only the city had only elected a handful of persons of color to ever be city councilors. So you can take that for what it is as well. The school committee had one person had only been elected to be school committee, and he was a Cambodian American about 2 or 3 years ago. And then another one recently became a school committee member because a racist school committee member went on TV and said some really bad words about Jewish people. And so he had to step off, obviously, because, I wouldn't want that person to represent students in our city, in our school committee. So a person of Black African American descent came up and replaced him. And so the city of Lowell in itself, I love the city. I love the city dearly. But like many, many, many other cities that have a lot of people of color that have built generations and generations of power, wants to hold on to that power because I'm not speaking for the whole city, but I can speak for a handful of people that may have some influence, that they're fearful of sharing that power with other people. And when you're fearful of sharing that power, you're going to do things, intentional or not, that's going to continue to oppress people that you say you want to support and work with and believe in your own community. I truly believe that we all come with our differences, but this city celebrates diversity in a way where it's for marketing, right? You can say you're celebrating diversity. You can say it's an all-American city. You can say we're a gateway city. You can say all these things. But if you don't have representation on the top tier levels, making decisions for the people that you say you truly are celebrating, then I don't think that's going to work. It's really important that if you have the power at that point, that if you really want to be inclusive and if you really want to truly celebrate the people that are living and thriving in your community, you got to be able to have representation in a way where they can have a voice for them when you're making major decisions that will affect them along the way. And so the city of Lowell itself had to go through a lawsuit where they had to change the voting system because the at-large voting system had always elected more than half of the city councils from one neighborhood in the city. That one neighborhood is called Belvedere, and Belvedere has a highly influential voter power white neighborhood that is a pristine, clean neighborhood that's on the hill that oversees the lower tiers of Lowell. And if you look at and you think about Lowell's history back then when it was a strong mill city, a lot of the mill owners lived on top, overseeing the poor people working at the bottom. And Belvedere, as some may know on this TV show, is known as, in French, Beautiful Hill. And so Belvedere had a lot of people from their neighborhood that was on the city council making decisions for the whole city. And it was predominantly white for a long time. And you'd had a lot of people of color running for office, but they never make it because our voting power is not strong enough to break the generations and generations and generations of voting power that has been built since the city was created, right? And so that system was challenged, and the city, agreed to the challenge, and so they decided to change the system. And now instead of having 9 city councils voted at large, now we have 11 city councils at total, where 8 are from specific neighborhoods and districts. 2 have to represent a strong Latinx and Asian community. And then 3 are at large, which means that the whole city will vote for 3 seats. And so now it allows for not just people representation, but also neighborhood representation as well. Because the Acre and the Lower Highlands are the poor, and the Centerville are the 3 poorest neighborhoods in the city. And if you're able to have a representative from those neighborhoods on the city council to make decisions on funneling money towards those parts of the city, then it's more equitable opportunities there.
Thank you so much, Sovanna, for talking to us about all of this. And I hope we can continue the conversation and hear more about your work with the Cambodian Mutual Assistance Association and what's happening in Lowell.
Yeah. Thank you again for having me. And I really appreciate this opportunity. And, Lowell is, like you said, a very vibrant Cambodian community. So feel free to come on down, visit us, and I'll be happy to give you a tour.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too.